I was telling a friend today that if God was best to bring children of heaven children of God into existence by having them birthed and brought up in heaven, then he would do so. But in his understanding, he has brought forth the universe of uncertainty with its astonishing mix of good and evil. I suspect you're not to change that. It gives opportunity to experience the consequence of good and evil dreams and hopes, and to find what you truly value accordingly from such experience of the outcome of such, which you could not do in an all-lovely environment like heaven. You would remain frustratedly doing that which is right and good and just, despite longing to do otherwise, which would hardly be heaven, would it? So in God's loving kindness, he has created the universe of uncertainty, of good and evil, etc. Change, time, space, matter, birth, death, suffering, old age, joys, marriage, life, death. That you may learn accordingly, that you may become graduating children of God, graduating finally from this universe into the heavenly realms of God's family. And the full awareness of God. This is life eternal, to know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. So, I don't expect to turn the universe of the transitory into heaven. I'm here as an observer. And certainly I can declare what my observations are and my very limited understanding accordingly. And some people will hear and some people won't. It's a bit like saying the poor you will always have with you. For the whole purpose of the universe is that we come in poor, but leave with eternal spiritual riches in heaven. And that I understand to be the purpose of this world, and indeed this universe. Time, space, matter, uncertainty, good and evil. And in faith and trust we can only say thank you, Heavenly Father. Else He would have it otherwise. But to trust, because of our experience of God's provision and bringing us through to this very moment, you and me, at the age that we are, reviewing such, comes the confidence, the trust, hope, and great desire for His continuing goodness. In short, we trust in the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. For what would be gained by doing otherwise? Nothing at all. Whereas even in uncertainty, the expected gain is infinite. By trusting in God. Because God is our ideal, infinitely good, perfect, and able, loving, kind, creator, and blessing of all. How could anyone not choose God? No matter how much the uncertainty. The expected gain is still infinity. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Love you. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Let me define expected value. It's the probability times the certainty value. Well, the certainty value of God is understood to be infinite. The probability of His existence is less than one from the point of view of being in a world of uncertainties. It's certain in heaven, of course, but not here, in other words. So you multiply that probability on earth, in this world of uncertainty, which might seem quite small to you, times the gain were got to exist, and that's infinite. Well, a non-zero probability, which in uncertainty must be non-zero, because if it was zero, that would be a certainty, wouldn't it? It could only not be, which is a certainty. In other words, at the zero and at the one end of uncertainty, if you like, uncertainty is between 0 and 1. 0 is certain and 1 is certain. Now we don't have certainties here in the world of uncertainty. So we're somewhere in between. So we multiply that non-1 and non-0 uncertainty by the gain that God would be if he exists, and we have infinity, and by the gain, or the zero gain, if God did not exist, and we have zero, and we add the two together, and the two certainties of 0 and 1 times the infinite gain is still infinity. Or we simply look at the uncertainty. For argument's sake, let's say 0.0001, the probability that God might exist despite all your depression and gloom and misunderstanding and so on. But he could possibly conceivably exist. Multiply that by the expected gain, if he does exist, which is infinite. Wow, you still have infinity, don't you? A small fraction of infinity is still infinity. Well, that's an interesting sort of rationale. Thank you, Heavenly Father. And I should also address the fact that this world is going to remain a mixture of good and evil, in all probability or uncertainty, shall I say, is needed in order to continue giving opportunity for prodigals to find out the truth of the matter as regards their values, which are astray, so to speak. This doesn't mean that I don't do that which is right. The whole point of being here is that I do practice doing what I understand to be right and what I wish to do. And these two start to fall into alignment with practice, because we find that some things that I wanted to do and value, I don't value in practice at all. They're pretty awful in outcome. And I adjust my values and purposes accordingly. So, the fact that this world will not be turned into a heaven, a utopia, does not mean that I don't practice pursuing all goodness as I understand it, and practice what I think is of value to me, and find out if it is of value to me when I find what the consequences of such values and practice is. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Well, what I'm saying is that we are not non-reactive to what's in the world on the grounds that this is the way God has it. This is the way God has it, and we are meant to react according to the way that we wish to act. And we then find out if our actions have a good outcome or not, and our values adjust accordingly. We are not simply passively looking at the world. I am here as an observer. I'm here as an observer of situations and how my values make those situations better or worse, and I act accordingly. And I change my values through such experience. I am most certainly here to experience acting out my values. I am an observer and an actor. In fact, to live is to act. is not just to observe. We could have observed from heaven and not been a player here at all. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Now the world, or the universe of uncertainty at any one time, is the appropriate way that it should be, given the needs, if you like, the level of ignorance of the persons in it. It provides the experience that they need to progress. It's not good or bad in itself. It simply does what is needed. The ideal is it's always doing what is needed in the most appropriate way. Now it may well be self-equilibrating in that way. That doesn't mean it's not responsive to your direct wants and desires. On the contrary, it means it is perfectly responsive to it. In which case you may couch it in terms of prayer, asking God to change certain things. But even your willingness to pray such will have been taken into account as regards how the universe is functioning. So the classroom lesson is appropriate to what is going to be taught to the class today. There's no point in it always teaching advanced astrophysics if what the kids really need is how to learn to read and write. The lesson will be according to what they need. And it's very individualized. It's homeschooling with, if you like, lots of parents on hand. Personal. Each one's got auntie or uncle teaching them. Now you may think, oh, this is quite fanciful. Yes, it's according to the imagination as to what might conceivably be the ideal. Why? Because we trust the ideal to be the case. The ideal is a wonderful God who made it all, loves us all, and will bring us all into a beautiful harmony in life eternal. You may have a better ideal than that. I'd like to hear it. Or perhaps your ideal is a particular interpretation of something like that. And I think that's why it's so appropriate that the first principle of life is that you love your God, your conception of God, with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And in pursuit of such, well, you'll get a clearer vision of what your God is. And my trust is that will have you homing in on the true God. And me too, homing in on such. And all of us. And that is the ideal for this universe. Time, space, matter, change, uncertainty. And us. And God, of course, our Heavenly Father. Thank you, Heavenly Father. It's quite popular at times for people to say, the Lord thy God says, or Jesus told me, or I met Jesus last night and he said the following and such. There are whole books on what Jesus has said to someone or other in some conversations and so on. We are perfectly able to have visions, to experience and to have dreams of Monty Python, if you like, anything. What we think of as God or Buddha or Krishna or archangels or demons, we are well able to entertain such thoughts in the mind in an absolute vivid reality that speaks to all our senses and mental capacities. It's no sound, proof, or evidence of anything. You are what you value, what you purpose, your inclination, and so on. That's who you are. It is changed by the experiences that you have. It might be a story, it might be a film, it might be a dream, it might be a vision, it might be a daydream, it might be an imagination that's scarcely realistic at all. But such experiences change you, your beliefs, inclinations, purposes, values. They all have an effect on you. They are all part of your experience. Doesn't make the external experience valid in some sense, and even this concrete universe, albeit of change and uncertainty, will roll up like a scroll, at least from your point of view, one day as a passing fantasy, scarcely a reality at all, and yet instrumental in fashioning who you are, who you become. The fact that, I see Jesus in a white robe or in a suit or on a mountain or in my bedroom, or I'm whisked off to the third heaven, or I'm, like Vanya, taken to some planet somewhere where there are no snakes and he's got an angel leading him. None of it is any more or less valid as regards experience and its effect on your values, purposes, inclinations, who you are. It's that which is eternal. I don't mean it stays the same way, but it's the you that's eternal, not these passing experiences, whether they're historical, fact, historicity, story, fantasy, legend, make-believe, films, programs, whatever. Their significance is that they affect your values and who you are, not the nature
of their appearing to you. So from another person's point of view, the Jesus you talked to gave you a pack of lies. It was clearly a demon. You talked to, Granny who's now dead, and it was very significant, but to a raving fundamentalist, it was just a demon pretending to be such. How you see it, how you receive it, is everything to you and to the effect on you. So don't be swept away by this person met Jesus and he told him the following thousands and thousands of words, and they all must be true because they're of Jesus. It's the Jesus he entertained in his experience, his thoughts, his passion, his vision, his dream, his imagination, whatever it was. It's not necessarily valid for you. It has been significant for him, yes, but it's not necessarily something that's of right significance for you. So I don't mean to say you can't read such things. They give you all sorts of ideas, but you will bring yourself to the party and say, yeah, well, I don't think that's really right. That's an interesting view. I wonder if that confirms so-and-so. That's interesting. Could be. But we're in a world of uncertainty. And what you saw and called Jesus, perhaps I would not see and call as Jesus if I did see it. Nor would I hear those words, but different words, and so on and so forth. Okay. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Thank you that we love you. The person of you as we see it, our God. And that our way, our best ways, does indeed seem to be to love the Lord, our God, with all our heart, soul, mind and strength, and trust most fervently that you will lead us to ever-increasing understanding and experience of your true presence. Love you, Heavenly Father. Thank you, Heavenly Father. I'll give you an example in regard to validity of experience. Reading a book about Chepo has a very interesting view that we prearrange our lives in heaven with help and advice. And I've heard this view before from a lady who was outstanding hypnotherapist in healings of people, that we plan the incarnation and that we can or live it out with some measure of uncertainty, but some fair measure of probability of it working out as hoped. And it furnishes in us a particular spiritual growth, understanding something we needed to conquer and understand. And we play the roles and have very limited knowledge of what's really going on when we're in the actual life, in order to have the experience, in a sense, the very limited experience that's necessary for the particular training that we feel we need to develop spiritually. And an interesting point was also raised that when you fervently purpose something in a life, you can be affecting beyond the time dimension circumstances that have led up to your situation and changing them. You know, in hindsight, don't like this outcome, you're praying against it, and it changes. Now, I've had that view that hindsight prayer might be valid. You wouldn't know in terms of this life particularly, because of course we're moving in the time dimension and we only see the consequence of what the earlier time is. And if you change what the earlier time is in some outside of time context, then of course you wouldn't know you'd done it. It just is what it newly is, if you like, according to your prayer that was answered or your fervent desire and so on. Now, that struck a chord with me because it confirmed my view of hindsight prayer possibility. But I'm not sure. Do you see, we're living in a world of uncertainty. I wouldn't like to risk my life that this theory was true or not. Is it my ideal? Might be. Trouble with our ideal is we're very limited in what we can conceive. I mean, if you're of a Steiner schooling background, then your imagination might be rather better than most people's. So you can imagine more fully a more appropriate heaven, more lovely heaven. And we're perhaps only imagining a rather inferior heaven because of our limited imagination and so on. And presumably then we have to suffer certain things the more because of it, because we were not clear on what is truly beneficial and what isn't. What is truly a blessing and what isn't a blessing. I think what I'm saying is, don't be too gullible. I suppose gullible is a negative connotation word. Don't be gullible at all. Listen to views, consider them. But don't feel you have to accept them. Don't be lured down views that are a bit dodgy or a bit too uncertain from your point of view. Say, well, I don't have experience in that area, I'm not sure whether that's right or not, it's an interesting view. I'll leave it on the shelf of to be considered as time may unravel and show. Yeah. Thank you, Heavenly Father.